Hello, friends. My name is Behunin, and I am a potter. For the last 29 years, I've been a full-time potter. And about 28 years ago, I began writing. And I wanted to share a little bit of the story behind the story. So people ask me all the time, how do you transition from making pottery to also writing? So I never would have written a book, but the voices wouldn't leave me alone. That's the short story. The long story is much more interesting, I think. But I came home from school one day and was out. I was at the University of Utah. Came home from school and was working out in my studio, a pottery studio that I was borrowing from a friend. And I began hearing voices, and the voices were so inspiring and so much more beyond the bits of wisdom that were coming through were so far beyond anything that my 24-year-old brain could come up with. And I felt compelled to write them down. But I was a potter, and my hands were almost always dirty, so I'd have to clean off my hands and go and write these things down. And pretty soon I was hearing the voices during the evening time, and I would write on weekends. And at one point, my computer started on fire, and I lost everything that I'd gotten to that point. And had to begin again, and there were many times like that, kind of fits and starts where I would pick up and leave off and not really know where the story is going, and focusing on trying to make a living as a potter, which is incredibly difficult sometimes. But I felt really strongly that this is what I needed to be doing, writing this book. And really it wasn't until I was 30 years old and was diagnosed with arthritis in my hands, of all places, that I began to take this writing seriously. That was a hard time. To make a living as a potter is difficult. To make a living as a potter with crippled hands is really difficult. And I had a young family by then. I had a mortgage payment. I needed to figure out how to make this happen. And I also needed to figure out how to work my way through the challenges of writing a book that I had no idea where I was going exactly, or what it was I was writing. At the time, I thought I was just writing one book. And that one book led to a trilogy, and then that trilogy led to another series, a pentology, 5 books in a series, and then several other standalone books, and a book of poetry, and a couple of books about creativity. As it turns out, maybe I'm a writer after all, and that's been a lot of fun to kind of discover that about myself. I love story. I've always been inspired by story, and I think many of us are. I think when I think about some of the best stories ever told, the things that are remembered, I think about Jesus Christ and his way of telling stories that were meaningful. They were parables that meant something a little bit different to everybody. And I aspire to tell stories like that. But the stories, the inspiration that came and continues to come through me are stories that are meaningful and hopeful, and that there's a moral lesson that can be learned and gained and understood. Emerson said that if a book isn't worth reading twice, it's not worth reading once. And I have always wanted to write books that people will want to not only keep on their own bookshelves, but will want to share with friends and family. And it's been really fun over the years, over these last 16 years since my first book was released, to see people come in sharing their books with me, asking me to sign a book that has already been signed before in some cases, but they want me to put something in their book after it's been dog-eared and notes have been written. And in some cases, the spine is falling apart because it's been read 15 times by the whole family. And people coming in to pick up a book that they've already read, but they want another copy. I sell so many books to people that have checked the books out at libraries and had come back and said, I need to have this in my personal library because it's so meaningful to me. And next time I'm reading it with a highlighter and taking notes. And it's been so fun to see so many of these books that have been shared with multiple people and have been not only read, but loved. Those are the books that I want to write. Those are the books that I want to share with the world. Those are the stories that I hope will mean something to you, not only for the time that you're reading it, but long, long after you've read it, that you will be thinking about these things, thinking about how you might stretch yourself and love a little bit more and do a little bit more to be kind and to be thoughtful and to be to dive a little deeper and see a little bit more, not only with the people that are in your world, but the world around you itself. I am a firm believer that we gain so much by story. And you might ask, well, then why don't you, if you've got these great ideas, why don't you write nonfiction? And there's something that can be gained from fiction, right? Picasso said, "Art is the lie that helps us see the truth," and I really believe that that's true. That when truth comes and knocks at our front door, sometimes it feels like it's scary and we don't want to accept it. But if truth comes around and knocks at the back door or just enters in through the back door and acts and looks like a friend, we want to invite it in to sit with us at the dinner table and share a conversation with us. Again, those are the books and the stories that I want to write and to share with people. People need story. We need hope. We need truth that's shared with us in a way that is meaningful and hopeful. These are the kind of stories that I've written. So my first book, the one that took 12 years to write and probably at least 20 different iterations over the years, was this book, Remembering Isaac. Isaac was the sixth generation potter in this little Quaker village of Neaterbit, Pennsylvania. He's just passed away without leaving an heir to his shop. And he's left the shop to 4 friends to help them and encourage them to please choose a new potter. And so they put out an invitation in a ceramics magazine to apply for this position. And a young potter by the name of Jake Kimball applies to come and work at this shop. He very reluctantly accepts this job, but he agrees to stay for a couple of months and just to try it out. And as Jake begins to work, I should mention that this book is more than just a book. It's really an experience. The book is designed to be like a potter's sketchbook. So there's doodles and sketches. There are glaze splatters on a couple of pages. As you flip through the edge here, you'll see a pot being made. I call it a self-propelled movie. As you flip through with a series of photographs, it creates a movie. But the story is Jake comes in, begins his work, and the potter's friends begin dropping by. There's a beam running through the middle of the studio, and on that beam, hanging from rusty nails, are a large collection of dusty mugs. But each of these mugs belong to an individual, a friend of Isaac's, who wants to come in and share with Jake the stories and the lessons and the secrets that they learned about life as they sat at Isaac's wheel and watched him work. So it's the passage of wisdom from one generation to the next, but rather indirectly through the potter's friends. This is a great compliment to Isaac because these stories have become part of these individuals' lives, and they've shaped them and formed them as a potter would the clay. He shaped and formed their lives into beautiful beautiful vessels as well. Fortunately for Jake, the barber's niece Amy Eckstein is in town to paint for the summer, and Jake and Amy, Amy's also a recent college graduate. They kind of hit it off and begin spending time together in the evenings as they figure out who they are and where they belong in the world. Amy's always wanted to be an artist and has been told by her parents and everybody else that you can't really make a living at art. And here Jake is really trying to do it. And they inspire each other, and it's easy to fall in love with them as they fall in love with each other. It's a slow-moving love story for some, but it's a meaningful love story. It starts with a friendship. It's an old-fashioned kind of love story. This is a slow burn, but a meaningful burn as it works its way into your heart. At the end of the first book, Jake receives Isaac's old sketchbook from the town priest, pseudo-priest Thomas, and Jake and Amy begin to discover who Isaac really was in his own words, in his own sketchbook. And so the story continues as they uncover the bits and pieces of who Isaac was, kind of putting together the backstory that they're understanding, that they're trying to understand, that is. Becoming Isaac is the third book in that series, and this is really how Jake and Amy take the lessons that they've learned and begin applying them to their own lives as people continue to visit, and as Amy takes on the courage that she needs to begin practicing and fulfilling the measure of her creation as an artist. There's lots about art, there's lots about dreaming, there's lots about really becoming someone better than what we are. We're all in the process of becoming and being shaped as a potter would shape the clay. We're all in the process of becoming something more. And that's what this series is really all about.